and a case of negligent damages go before a jury. Anything could happen. Our goal as property managers is to make sure that we do everything as possible that we can do to make sure our guests are safe. Safe from structural damages, safe from slick sidewalks, improper railings or rails that haven't been repaired, walkways that are improperly constructed, anything that could be a potentially hazard. Pool areas, are the pool areas safe? Those type of things. So if you are legally liable and you're found negligent, they can name you individually as a general manager or the CEO of a company. So negligent damage could either be criminal court. Criminal means you're going to be charged criminally, and civil means there will be compensatory damages, which are paying fees for damage or injury or medical bills or time off for work. Any of these are part of that. So it's our legal obligation to make sure that our guests and our employees are safe. If we don't and we get sued, the term used is punitive damages, monetary damages, how much the company pays out in insurance fees, or if they don't have enough insurance and they have to find the money elsewhere. So we are to demonstrate the guest's safety. We are to take reasonable care. That's the key term when you go to a negligent liability lawsuit hearing. Did the hotel take reasonable care? Did they demonstrate reasonable care? First is the hotel facility. I gave you an example on Monday where I said a group of teenagers were at a mall in Oahu, Hawaii. They were leaning on the rail. The rail construction crumbled, it fell. The teens, 2 fell to their death and 2 got injured, being paralyzed for life. The mall was found negligent because they were given written warnings by the senior investigator, city inspector of Oahu, and they didn't take action. So they were looking into whether they would press criminal charges or civil. So the facilities, you gotta do a walkthrough. Is there proper lighting in parking lots? Is there proper lighting in alleyways? All these are part of the responsibility of the facility. Part of that is the kitchens, proper refrigeration, having a HACCP plan. That means all of you had sanitation or you're about to take sanitation. When food is prepared or produced and it goes through the preparatory methods, what's the analysis critical control points through production that we need to take and monitor temperatures. If you get someone sick and they get ill on your property and they find you negligent, you're responsible as a hotel property manager. And they don't just point the finger at one person. It could be the general manager, the food and beverage director, executive chef, whoever the directors are that are responsible for that property. The hotel staff is also responsible for the general manager and the directors to take care of their staff and their team. If you've got a parking lot where your staff constantly goes out to and they are injured, hurt, physically hurt, and there are signs out there that say you take this on your own responsibility, doesn't mean that you are not responsible. If these situations continue to happen and the property's been notified by the staff, they've been notified by the safety and security police in town, by the city managers, whatever notifications, and they still don't take responsible, they're still negligent. It doesn't matter how much signage you have. If you know there's an issue and you didn't take the proper care or reasonable care, you will be found negligent. And once you go through and do your walkthrough and do your risk assessment, you want to make sure that you have policies and procedures. If a guest gets injured, if a staff person falls or faints, or they have an issue, we don't just look at our procedures in writing for our guests, but it's also for our team and team members. So guest safety, the facility, threat analysis, when you do your risk assessment, systematic procedure, identify and eliminate identify safety risks. Reasonable care, that means demands by a guest, right? If there's a risk, okay? That means if there's a hurricane or a tornado coming and you don't notify the guests. When we had a hurricane coming that was supposed to hit the islands, we packed care packs for all the guests because they couldn't leave. They couldn't get off the island. Flights were canceled. So we put together water, batteries, lights for each guest, for each room. We had a common area where they would pick them up. We had meetings where we talked to the guests, what was going on, what was happening, where they were to meet if they lost power or if they lost water, if there was a warning where they could not stay in their hotel or they're in their room. We had a plan in place and the guests and the staff knew that plan. Okay, so facility, identify any known threats. Inform the guests about the threats. That means if you're doing construction and you know this area is unsafe and you're putting new lights in, close it off until its construction is complete. Notify the guests that this is not a safe area. It's been closed off. Let them know where there are safe areas where they can get to where they need to go. Staff training. This is very important. People do not do staff training on how to handle a situation, an issue, an emergency. All your guests should know and your staff should know where they need to go or what's going to happen. OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health Administration, monitors any major safety issues on a property that have to do with employee issues or major construction or repairs or equipment. They will notify you that you're out of compliance and you're not in regulation, and they'll notify your local federal agency, local city manager, planner, city inspector, and they will fine you or they will red tag your property.
Chef,
Yeah,
the slides aren't moving.
they're not moving. They're moving
No.
for me.
Are you
Hold on.
serious?
Oh, there we go. All right, I won't do slideshow. How's that?
Yes, okay, now I see them. You're on
Okay.
13, right?
Correct.
Okay.
A lot of the information we're lecturing on is repetitive. The most important part of this whole procedure is the risk assessment and the training of the staff. So once you do the risk assessment and you know your property, you know what you need to have in your capital expenses that you need to put aside for repairs, or you have to go to, if it's immediate and it's been red tagged as an immediate repair for safety issues, you got to find the money somewhere with the corporate, or if it's a property that's personally owned, you have to take a loan or something to make that repair. Because you can be found criminal negligent. Times have changed. There's no longer, you know, where you're civilly liable. You can be held criminal negligent if it's someone is seriously killed, maimed, or injured. So before a staff, when you have your onboarding training, all staff should know, especially here in Florida, we have weather-related issues. Where should people go in a hotel if there is a, let's say a thunderstorm, a power outage, a hurricane, and they can't get a flight out, or they stayed the last minute? Like I told you, in Kauai, we had a hurricane. People didn't leave. They stayed because they said, hey, I paid for it. The storm may not hit. You know how that goes. Oh, it's not going to hit. So they stayed. So we're legally liable if we do not take care of them. So we went around room to room with security. We posted in the hotel in-room televisions and told them we're having a major meeting. Here's where you pick up your emergency supply kits, typical supply kit. We're not serving food in the restaurants. We're serving it in one ballroom in the convention center. One fee, we'll charge you a flat rate. If the hurricane hits, we won't charge you anything. So the flat rate went all the way up until the weather got bad. So then we started charging regular prices, but we made nice buffets. This way they wouldn't have to roam the property. We had a bar there and we had nice food, a breakfast buffet, a lunch buffet, and a dinner where we had everybody in one spot and we knew where they were at. And every day we had a streaming video going of the safety procedures and emergency procedures. And we had each room's numbered emergency kit. So we knew if a room did not pick up their kit and we knew who was in that room. So we as managers had to stay on property, and we managed that property. We let most of our staff go. And the ones that said they would stay and help out, we got them rooms. They were allowed to stay in the room, and they helped us do what we had to do, and they got paid, et cetera. But everybody was trained. So when this emergency event happened, our customers were well informed. That was the management team. We put a plan together right away. So for daily operations, your training staff needs to know, like I explained that Monday, when somebody slips and falls and gets injured on the pool, what happens? Those pool servers acted right away. They knew. They didn't say, oh, it's not my job, or I don't know what to do, or who should I call? They knew how to act right away. So OSHA doesn't get involved. They're not, unless something bad happens, or if the city or the local leaders call on you. OSHA is a federal governing agency. And if you're doing new construction or remodel, OSHA will make sure you have all your permits. Construction, they'll make sure you have your right. If your construction workers have to hang from the ceiling, or if they're in the rafters or on scaffolding and they have the right suspension units and safety measures in place, they'll be there to inspect the pre-construction. But outside of that, if you're a pre-existing hotel, they're going to follow up with the city and the city guidelines, or if someone calls, or if there's something that's an emergency. One of the case studies we're going to be doing is on Kansas City. The walkway from Kansas City linking the ballroom to the hotel collapsed. It was new construction, and naturally OSHA, state federal inspectors, city inspectors, everybody involved was there to find out what actually happened. Okay, so material safety data sheets, or any sheets that have chemicals that are used on property and they're stored and kept in one area. Today, everything is electronic, so we have electronic. That means if somebody has an emergency or an accident, you read the manual and it tells you exactly what you have to do to eye wash, to clean that particular chemical out, to dilute it with water, etc. And that's the acronym for material safety data sheet, any chemical area. So the kitchens, the laundry room, engineering that use chemicals for cleaning, solvents, or anything like that, all have to have material safety data sheets available. You'll notice in the kitchen now that I have COVID kits where if someone gets sick, there's a chemical we have to use to put down on it. And then there's a cleaning kit that we supplied to us that we have to have. So that was a precaution that was taken by the college for COVID cleanup. So you have to have written policies and procedures. This should be given to all staff and training for onboarding. So we have external and internal resources. So internal would be, if I hire a security manager or a security director, they would help the executive management team put procedures and policies in place. Department heads, department managers, all would be involved in putting these procedures and policies in place also. External will be, I'm not going to hire a manager for security. I'm going to hire and lease out contracted security force. So that means they would sign a document, a contract. You pay them. You tell them how many security managers you want, where you want them. You go through a risk assessment, and they're a hired, separate contracted security management team. They'll come in their own security uniforms. They'll be visible. They'll walk around the property, and people will know that they're there. Internal tools, making sure that you have good systems in place. You'll walk around with a security safety team for the first time. Let's say you do not contract a security team. You're going to do it in-house. So you're going to walk around with a security manager, but I highly recommend that you hire an outside team for the first walkthrough, just to get an outside view on what should be done. The swipe cards that are used today are recordable. They can show, if the guest booked a room, they'll show that the actual guest clocked in or logged in and logged out of that swipe key to get into that room. If it's maintenance, engineering, or housekeeping, it'll show the number of the card issued, who had that card at that point in time. It'll be in a database. So don't think that nothing's recorded. So if a security manager has to get into a room and it's assigned to a guest, they have to ask permission to get into that room. But it'll show when they use their own personal swipe card that they were in the room. Same with housekeeping. Housekeeping goes in and cleans the room at a certain period of time unless the guest notifies the front desk that they want no cleaning service, or if they post something on the door. Then the housekeeper goes in and swipes their own personal card. It'll show that that card was issued. It'll be a number, the date the card was logged in and logged out. And then the housekeeping supervisor can go through and see who had that card and who that card was issued to. So for example, if there's a master card that's been issued to manager on duty, lead housekeeper, executive housekeeper, whatever the title is, executive engineer, they'll know who has that card. And if that card was taken and somebody else used it, well, then that's where the gray area comes about. Card was stolen, or a manager issued their own individual card to someone and that card was used by somebody else. Alarm systems are checked on a regular basis. So there is a schedule for the fire department and for the sprinkler company to come in and check all alarm systems. It'll be on a regular schedule. If you hire a security company, they'll come in and check their surveillance cameras and systems. They should have backed up systems in the cloud so that you have backed up digital videos of what's happening on the property. And all companies and properties should have an emergency plan, which was developed from the risk assessment. It should be available in writing and somewhere in a safe area or cloud or electronic, available to everybody. So the emergency plan should include, not all plans are going to be alike. It's going to be based on the risk assessment, but they should include any crisis. So Palm Beach County, we would have flooding, hurricane, tornadoes, all weather related, hail, thunderstorms, weather related. Then we would have crime. Somebody was assaulted, somebody was violated, someone broke into a room and violated an individual physically. So all of these have to be scenarios. First of all, in manager's training, if there's an issue or an emergency and you need the police there or an EMT, you call 911. That's your first response of any person or a team member. Then you contact your local security person, your manager on duty. That's like your second or third response. First response is 911. I tell all my staff that. So you write everything in a written document so that you go through and make sure when you're training your team and your new onboarding employees who are just getting onboarded to work, that there's a written plan that we're making sure we go through and cover all of these scenarios and how we operate. Where should people meet if there's a hurricane, or if there's a tornado, or if there's a mass shooting and there's a red alert? Where would people go? All right, and it's our world we live in today. We have to know these things. Okay. External allies, know your local law enforcement. Here on campus, we get to know the safety and security staff. We send them food, we invite them for events and meals. Know the local police. So if I was a general manager or an F&B director, I'll know who my local team is, my local establishment. Host special training meetings and include them so they know that you're consulting with them, you're taking their professional advice. Know that, and they'll become more familiar with you and your property, and they'll work a lot closer for you, and they'll respond quicker because they know if you're calling that they know where to go, where to be, and that there's you need them. There's a scenario, okay? And then as the GM or executive management team, you would know who your insurance companies are and who to contact. That's senior executive management stuff. Law enforcement, we talked about that. Become familiar with them. Work with them closely. Okay, so now most every hotel I have worked in has had a swimming pool. So risk assessment, you're gonna have all the signage, but you wanna make sure that if you're a manager on duty, you're constantly going to the pool, you're checking the pool, looking at the bottom of the pool, walking around, constantly Even though you might have a sign that there's no lifeguards on duty, swim as you rest at your own risk. You don't want anyone to get injured or hurt on your shift, your time, your property, where you work at. You want people to be safe. So know that, walk around. My office was right outside the pool area. So I didn't sit in my office. I constantly walked. And I say a pool, it wasn't a small pool, it was massive. It had lava rock slides. It had, you couldn't see from one side of the pool to the other because of all the rock and caves and things. You had to walk around. What if somebody had a heart attack inside one of them rock kind of cave things where you walk under that were waterfalls? The water falls on you, comes out onto you, and it's a rock cave. You know, you got to walk around. We had lifeguards at that property because it was so large. But as a manager, I walked around. I got to know the guests. Those guests were there for, when you go to Palm Beach County to stay, or Hawaii, you don't stay for a long weekend for the most part. You stay 7 to 14 days as a guest, probably average 10 days. So you get to know them over a certain period of time. You also get to know the owners, if it's a condo owner association that's associated with the hotel. Check your spas, check your locker rooms, walk around. Manager on duty, first thing I did when I came on shift was I met with all my managers. When I walked through the office, I said hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever shift it was, saw my managers, then I walked the property. I went to each individual restaurant, each individual bar, so people would know who I am. But then I was looking around, picking up garbage, lining up chairs, looking at the pool area, making sure things were in place, they weren't out of place, making sure all areas were staffed, especially with lifeguards, safety, security. I would check who the manager on duty was, which was always identified. In Hawaii, we had blue cards and red cards for alcohol service. So we had to make sure that whoever the manager on duty had a blue card, and then next to their name, there would be a blue dot showing that they had a blue card, which means they were certified in alcohol service as a manager. So we also had to have someone, we always had a food and beverage person on for my team because we went 24/7. We had banquets, we had bars, we had restaurants. So we always had to make sure we had someone on staff that could help the night audit and the front desk with any issues. So walk the property, be visible. I didn't sit at my desk. People always knew where we were at. We had the Nextel cell phone walkie-talkie, so you could hit a button and it would beep for an emergency. And we had different lines that we would be on, one for F&B, one for MOD, and one for executive senior management, one for security. So you know where to go, who to call. And you just hit the buzzer, it makes a loud noise, and they would pick up. And that was for on property. They look like cell phones, and you would issue those out. Okay, so walk and make sure you're walking the whole property and you're visible. People got to know who the managers are. We all wore the same shirts and we all had our names tags on. Okay. So as you do your risk assessment of the pool, you're going to follow all the standard procedures, correct signage, depth. You know, if there's is a manager on, is there a lifeguard, is there a safety person? Policy procedure signs. If there's emergency, where would a guest go? Who would they contact? Okay. Special safety threats, directional signals. So whenever I had a special event, the hotel was so large, we always had signs. I had a whole room that were full of signs, and every day part of my job was I was changing signs out. I would put them on a printer and make these signs that would have arrows that would say this event, you know, exhibit ballroom A, such and such event. And there would be arrows and they'd be all over. So people would know where they would go and know where the main room is. Some people had their own event planner. There would be a command center. So I have a sign up when we had large events that were there for a week and they had breakout rooms or meeting rooms, or, you know, we had church group that had prayer rooms. They had meetings where they had service, church service. So I had to label all these doors and rooms. So signage is very important in a large resort. And that signage changes daily. I had these little things that I would carry around that had signs that we would make. So very important. Parking areas, well lit. Do you have to have security guards? Do you have to have people picking people up in golf carts? Are they monitored? Properties I've been at had many parking areas, more than one. Okay. Internal threats, security should identify these. Internal threats are if you have an employee who is verbally assaulting another employee, who's harassing an employee, stalking an employee. These are all internal threats. External threats, same scenarios. You have a local community person that is stalking people in the parking lots. A local group has been breaking and mob robbing out of the cars. All these things I've had on every job I've had a scenario that I've just mentioned, okay? So there are different internal threats. Most of it is safety and security. Embezzlement, we're gonna talk a little bit more about that in another lecture, okay? Assets, we're gonna talk about company property, services. Okay? Hotels operate 24/7, especially here in Palm Beach County when people do vacation rentals, they do Airbnb, they lease out people's condos. All of this is more than just a hotel room. The properties I were at in Hawaii and California were both condos and hotels, and we had to manage both areas. There were timeshare units that were short-term rentals. Okay, cash. I'll talk about that a little bit later. We assigned banks, individual bank boxes with lock and key. Food and beverage had a lock and key safe area where banks were. All different areas had an area where you got your banks from the front audit and accounting. You'd be issued a bank, and then you would have to sign that bank out and the money, and it would go in your lockbox. Some of them were permanently signed out, and you would get frequent pop-up audits by accounting to make sure all that money was there and you were not over or under. If you're under, that means you short on your bank and you owe, and if you're over, that means you didn't turn your money into accounting, and that wasn't good either. Okay, we'll talk more about that. Okay, so external threats would be people damaging the, anything that's associated with the hotel. It could be people that are leasing out rooms and doing damage. It could be a conventions or conventions room that are getting damaged by people, things of that nature. It could be your facilities if you have a spa or a training room and somebody goes in and just destroys them and breaks things and tears things up. These things have happened, okay? So there's security measures that are taken into place. And today with the cloud and electronic service security devices, a lot of this is alleviated, okay? Global terrorism, we're gonna have a separate lecture on that, okay? Okay, so that is a general overview of hospitality security. There's a lot of areas to cover. So I just did a general overview to discuss what needs to be looked at in your risk assessment. Your first assignment is that you're going to be doing a risk assessment on your property. You're going to look at what you think needs to be taken care of, a plan needs to be written, or something needs to be done to protect your guests and keep them safe. That's the first step in hospitality security.